you consider that 98 Olympia to be his best ever conditioning, Chad?
Yeah.
I think the 98, I've got a couple, that I think the best conditioning might have been the Arnold.
The Arnold was the best conditioning. Yeah. Arnold Classic.
I think the 98 and 99 Olympia, and even the tour afterwards, I think all of those were great. But but I think 03 is probably the combination that will never be touched of conditioning, size, fullness. Like, yeah, forget it. Right? We ain't ever gonna.
That's 03.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really. There's no mistaking what year that was.
Yeah.
2003.
We put it all together. Size and conditioning. That was a lot of hard work there. A lot of hard work. I mean, I used to take like 3 months off after the Olympia to give my body a break. That year I didn't. I didn't take no time off. I went straight into training right away. And that was the result. I think I went from weighing the year before, I think it was like 245 somewhere in there, because we had over dieted a little bit to like 285.
Yeah, in the off season, I think he was so consistent that off season. There was no variance. Like, it was the minute he walked back in the gym, it was forward progress straight through. And so when we started the diet, it was like right around in July. He was at his all-time biggest and hardest at that point. Like, I remember it was like 325 or something like that. And he was in crazy shape for off season at that point. And so you could just see like the outcome was going to be crazy. But at no point, could you imagine, where it was going to be. You just knew that it was going to be something very unique just based off of where he was at and, at the high point of, off.
And we had went from dieting, I think we dieted 16 weeks for the last Olympia. That Olympia, we only dieted like 9.
Yeah.
9 weeks of hardcore dieting. And that was the result. But I trained heavy too. Everything was heavy. Everything was heavy. It was heavy every time I went in the gym. It was the heaviest I'd ever trained my whole entire life, actually.
Chad, do you have any input to Ronnie's training, or do you just leave him to his own devices?
No, man. I mean, the minute I saw Ronnie training, there was never really, there was never a question. Like, a lot of guys, I'll go in and revamp everything, because, I mean, most people feel like they're training at a certain level, and a lot of people aren't. A lot of people train they have one way of thinking where whether it's all heavy or all hypertrophy or whatever. And I'll go in and adjust, hey, listen, I think you're good heavy training here, but I think you should be more hypertrophy here, this, that. Ronnie, body responded off of heavy weight. He was intense in every, aspect that he ever, did. So I knew that was never even going to be a factor. I knew that he was going to walk into the gym and just kill it every time. The only time we really kind of talked about training was that last year when we were dealing with a little bit of an injury. And so we had to kind of go get, away from what his norm was, trying to shock the system a little bit. But I mean, that was something we were dealing with because of an injury. But basically his overall training, never.
Yeah.
So what about, I remember one of the Battle for the Olympias, and Ronnie was taking a lot of different supplements. I mean, a lot of tablets and soft gels. And did you take care of his supplementation? Because
a lot of the over-the-counter stuff. So here's one of the things that we did right off the bat was we laid out, just basically vitamins and minerals, making sure that his gut health was in check and just everything, all aspects of that. And so we laid all of that out. And, it's funny, because that was something he did to a little bit, a little bit. But he went from doing a little bit to having a tackle box.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
of stuff. But I'll tell you, I mean, that's one of the things, there's so many people that, train heavy, they do all of this kind of stuff. They're willing to go, over on the dark side sometimes and literally neglect the basic stuff that's literally directly in front of them that literally regulates the function of the body. And those were some of the things that, we incorporated from day one. Like, that's, right off the bat, making sure that his gut health was in check and just everything. Just making sure that the body was as, imbalanced, as balanced out and just in sync as possible, And again, like, these are things that a lot of bodybuilders will do sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, they'll do it maybe when they get ready for a show or what. But, a lot of times they look, athletes look at off season like, this is like a downtime for me. This is like a break. These things aren't important during this phase of, bodybuilding.
And I took it was like a time too.
100%, like boom, boom, boom. Like he was just, it didn't matter like what phase he was in. He was in phase getting ready for the Olympia. Didn't matter if it was contest phase, off-season phase, like everything was still like in check, always, like always.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like everybody was like, what's it going to take to beat Ronnie? I'm like, listen, here's the thing you got to realize. First of all, you got to be blessed with God-given genetics. Then you've got to out-train Ronnie, which is virtually impossible. You have to outthink Ronnie, which is virtually impossible. You have to like mentally be tougher than Ronnie, virtually impossible. You have to out-diet Ronnie, virtually impossible.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a virtually impossible scenario,
Yeah, that's how you win 8 Olympias, though. That's how you win 8.
So
should have been 9.
Yeah. So Ronnie's told me many times about the 2001 Olympia. You had that scary morning, and you kind of told him to drink some water. Do you want to take us through that, Chad? Because it could be interesting to hear the other side of the story. What was that like for you as the coach when he was in trouble on the morning of the 2001 Olympia?
Absolutely. So here's the kind of the story of that. So we went, so we were basically on point with everything, and we had already kind of started manipulating water.
Yeah.
And we had a game plan set in motion. Like everything was literally set in motion. We were good to go. The only thing that we didn't anticipate was that Ronnie was going to get a phone call at 5:30 in the morning to go run around to all these radio shows.
Oh,
and
no.
to do all these damn like appearances.
Oh. Media appearances.
Dude, so and I'm trying to get a hold of Ronnie. I'm like, fuck is Ronnie? Where is he?
In the morning.
5:30. It was like 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So basically Wayne calls him up, and Wayne had basically scheduled like all these like radio appearances, TV appearances, promoting the Olympia. And of course the athletes back then signed a contract stating like they have to do whatever it is, that you got to do to promote the Olympia. So I'm freaking out. Like I'm trying to get a hold of Ronnie. I'm like, where the hell's Ronnie at? Like, is he still asleep? Like, where the hell is he? I'm like going crazy. And I mean, it was literally about 12 o'clock. Like, so it was like 7 hours. And I think he had one meal with him, like the whole time. Like, I mean, and so we get back and I can tell, like, he lays down on the bed, like he's out. Like he's out. So I'm like, man, he's just completely exhausted. And so he's like, man, I don't feel so good. Like and again, like he's just being traveled around in the desert. It's hot. It's like all this stuff going on. He's had one meal. We're already a little bit dehydrated. Like all of this stuff starts to snowball. And you can tell like Ronnie is literally like just crashing. Like he's crashing. And so at this point, I'm like, we've got to like make a decision. And I'm like, the decision, I made was basically first we got to get Ronnie back to normal. We got to get him back to normal. We'll deal with everything else once we get him back there. So I'm like, listen, we got to scrap the game plan that we're on right now and start over. So we literally, basically rehydrated him. I'm like, start drinking water, start rehydrating. I think he took a shower or something and then went to sleep for like 3 or 4 hours. And basically we put a burger in him. We put like, a little bit of junk food and just drank and drank and drank. And then literally started the process over once we kind of leveled him out. And dude, it was basically like a fucking Hail Mary pass. Like we knew like we were going to have to, obviously the main goal was to get him back healthy, getting back feeling good. And then get him in good enough shape to still win the Olympia, So it was tough. And that was one of the things. It was, it was scary. Afterwards I go like, you know, we knew, like, man, from this point on, like, don't answer the phone in the morning. Like, that's for sure, especially if it's Wayne. Like, don't answer the phone.
Yeah, the night before the Olympia, I was putting on my tan, and I was in the bathroom. My girlfriend was tanning me up. And the next thing I noticed, I'm laying in the bathtub. I literally fainted while she was putting on tan. I'm like, oh man, that wasn't that wasn't no fun. So I go to bed and I wake up and I can't hardly get out of bed. This is the morning of the show. I cannot get out of bed. I'm like, man, what's wrong with me? I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And about another 30 minutes later, I started feeling real sick to my stomach. I'm like, oh boy, that's not good. And then about another 30 minutes after that, I started feeling sicker and sicker to the point that I was like, I'm not gonna make it. I called Chad and I say, hey, Chad, I think something seriously wrong with me. I feel like I'm dying. I'm going to the hospital. He's like, no, don't do that. You work too hard. You work too hard to come this far and just give it away like that. He's like, grab a gallon of water and just start drinking it.
Chug
it.
I said, drink the whole thing in the next 30 minutes.
And that's what I did. I drank a whole gallon of water. And after that, I started feeling a whole lot better. But you know, I was holding water. But at least I didn't feel like I was dying anymore. So that was the worst I ever felt in my whole life. And it's scary. It'll scare you because you actually, I think I was exhausted. And I've heard people say that they were exhausted. And I'm like, that ain't nothing. Ain't nothing wrong with being exhausted. How can you feel like you dying, you know, to the point that you need to go to the hospital or something? And after that, I like, okay, now I know what exhaustion really feels like.
And it's tough too.
It feels like you're dying.
Yeah. It's tough too when you're in that state,
so much pain.
And you're dehydrated in that state. So
yeah,
your body is
right.
Yeah, you're already at a death.
You don't think logically. You think I'm going to the hospital.
Yeah, it was a tough. That was a tough year, man. That was
tough. Oh, that was the toughest year ever. Toughest year ever. But we pulled it out.
The crazy thing is, and then the crazy thing is, like, that year at prejudging, we were kind of like, you know, and then we were able to regroup in between shows.
And that year they used to have the morning show that morning and the night show that night. So it was all in one day.
2001 was on the same day?
Yeah, it was on the same day.
Not on two separate?
It wasn't a 2-day show back then.
Okay, I was there. I can't remember.
Yeah, because I remember we went back to the room and we made some more adjustments. And I came back for the night show like my old self, you know, back in, you know, real good condition.
Yeah, conditioning was like, not only was he in good conditioning, but like he was like upbeat, like his
energy and everything. You know, by that time, that morning show, I still wasn't fully recovered to like 100%. You know, like I was normally at a Mr. Olympia show.
Yeah,
Chad. Now I saw the Battle for the Olympia for 2002. And we saw him, you know, is it 2 weeks out? You're 260 or 270, about 2 weeks out, wasn't it?
That was about 3 weeks out.
Yeah,
277 somewhere in there.
Now, Chad, you know, obviously you wanted to bring him down to kind of how he was at the Arnold Classic in that kind of condition. Do you regret that decision now, even though he still won? And what was what was the game plan? What was the thinking behind it?
So the thing is, like, he was in really good shape there, and we're pushing like just a little bit deeper, trying to get those beats like super crisp before, like trying to, at that point, we're like, you know, my thinking is like the more that we can accomplish before the show, the less we have to do at the show, the more stable the body becomes. And so we had like set such a crazy standard at the Arnold that like now that's my vision. Like that Arnold condition is the vision. And so we just pushed deep into it. And the more we pushed, the more the body pushed back on that, you know what I mean? And so it was, you know, that year was like I think that was the year that really, really kind of changed everything, because in 2003, then we literally revamped the whole thing.
Yeah.
We revamped everything. And then we were struggling that year too, because he had gotten so big that we couldn't put enough food in his system without kind of like bloating his stomach a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to keep him full, yet we had to eat like so much whole foods to do it. And, before the show. And so we like literally changed the whole process. I literally created a friggin' like starch that we could use, that we didn't have to eat as much whole foods.
That's right. Yes.
And so we use half as much whole foods and use the starch to get the rest of it. And it was a game changer that year, man. His stomach, not only was he crazy big, and I remember the first time like we sent it, we done a trial run of it about 3 weeks out. And I'm like, listen, we're going to do this for a couple of days. Let's try it. I want to make sure it doesn't mess up your stomach. I just want to make sure we're good.
Yeah.
Like he sent me back the pictures and I'm like, oh shit.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. Shit. Wow.
Yeah, like this is it, and you could just see like the difference, like the body just exploding.
Have you got any pictures of that, please?
I'm sure there's pictures.
3 weeks out, 2003. Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, here's the thing, like from that point on, he didn't lose a lot. He just kept getting, harder and denser, but like his weight just, didn't really, come down that much. It wasn't really until we started like, manipulating water that he even came down into, a few more pounds.
Yeah. I stayed around 300 all the way up into the Olympia that year. And, I started coming down, like you said, literally, 2-3 days before. I am now offering exclusive membership access for all my loyal followers. That's right. Big Ron's letting out all the training secrets. So go to my YouTube, sign up now, be one of the first to join Big Ron's team. Yeah, buddy.